Excellent.
Okay.
So I'll just very briefly introduce Susie. We met through the Mary Magdalene Association. She lives down in the Pyrenees at a magical Mount Bugarach, which is, she'll tell us more about that mountain. It's one of the Cathar sacred mountains, like Montségur. And she's been living there for many years and knows a lot about the legends and the energy of the area. But she's essentially a spiritual pilgrim from many years traveling throughout the world in India, and but originally actually born in France, but grew up partly in Britain. So anyway, it's a pleasure to have your presence, Susie, and
Yeah, thank
go
you.
for it. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah. So yeah, I've also much traveled in India, and actually I wanted to bring some of my understandings of Indian spirituality this time, because I know I talked about Bugarach Mountain last time, but I wanted to bring in my understanding of the Indian way to bring some more light on Mary Magdalene. So that I want to talk about Mary Magdalene as being a doorway to the divine feminine and to the goddess, essentially. So when we're presented with Mary Magdalene, although there are many, many stories, she's still essentially an unknown. She's taken on mythical sanctity in the same way as Jesus. But the early Gnostics, they didn't focus on whether such characters actually existed or not. They may have existed and they may not have, but the importance in a spiritual regard, rather than the later literalist religious regard, was about them being archetypes that one can relate to on a personal level as a tool for spiritual growth and spiritual exploration and spiritual experience. So if it is so that Jesus and the Marys and the disciples, they all existed, which is naturally a possibility, they were humans with qualities and weaknesses, as are all people, but their manner of living touched the heart of an already existing tradition of the sacrificed king who is reborn, and the Isis mother and child iconography, and the sanctity of the divine lovers, which somebody else had mentioned. And if they didn't exist, that is, if they were story-like creations by spiritual seers to engage the people in spiritual life, then this is also fine, because what's important is that there's been gifted here to the world consciousness principles of love and forgiveness, and love thy neighbor and do unto others as one would wish for oneself. This is the combining of ethics and purity of being with the old understanding that this world is not just a place of the mundane, but it is in every way sacred. And this old concept is a tantric concept. And the new way adds the idea of evolutionary personal growth and the relevance of compassion, which is in essence the gift of Christianity, which has been at other times in other lands been expressed in Jainism, especially, and Buddhism, and later in Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of love. So it's a theme which the heart and the soul delights in. So where does the original path of compassion and love for all begin? But way back in the times when the goddess was fully revered. So we had the warring religion that came along, of the male interests, and this sublimated what once was. The male god was adopted to suit a time of conquests and the dominion of kings, and gradually the goddess was phased out of the people's consciousness. She was allowed to remain as a consort to the god, and then she just disappeared. She became temple courtesan and then simply prostitute. She was the sun, and then the moon, and then the earth, and only the earth, which was ravaged and raped and demeaned as no longer spiritual. Only the heavens were now spiritual. She was the priestess, the Vestal Virgin, the guardian of the hearth and the home. And then men usurped the role of priests, and she was married off, and her home became a place to imprison, control, and enslave her, rape her, beat her, murder her and her daughters, from matriarchy to patriarchy, from love to lust, from compassion to war. And what of the spiritual soul of humanity? What happens there? What to do? It needed the reawakening of love. And hence there came forth Jainism, Buddhism, and Christianity, repackaging and gifting what had long ago been lost to us, albeit presented by men. The love of the goddess returns, minus the goddess. And this is where an often marginalized figure like Mary Magdalene becomes someone to naturally resonate with, because on a soul level, regardless of our lost history, our lost memories, our unconscious overlaying conditioned mindset, she is none other than the lost goddess herself. And that is why we love her. She is disguised as a peripheral figure. She has been demoted by the church, at one time said to be a prostitute. Her kiss with Jesus was erased from scripture. The male followers were jealous of her and annihilated her relevance, and they fashioned what would become Christianity. But she survived onwards as a saint. Like Mother Mary, there was a place for her, though not at the center of religion. And eventually Protestantism banished her altogether. As I said, spirituality had become only of the heavens, the afterlife, from the richness of existence to non-existence, from variety of divinity to the void. It's the only way that love has been permitted in new religion, by distancing it from reality, from real life. And in a country like France, which is not particularly religious anymore, and not since the revolution, and in this part of France, since the Cathars were massacred, it affected the people. But despite this loss of religious passion, there has always remained a fascination for the Black Madonnas, for Mother Mary, and for Mary Magdalene herself. And it is so because one has to rebalance the imbalance, to re-find magic in seeming mundane, mechanical existence. Intuitively, one reaches towards any remaining fragmentary representations of the lost goddess. In times of suffering, when healing is needed, prayer is made naturally to these female divinities, just as once long ago in ancient times. The mind forgets, but the soul does not. So I talked about fragmentary aspects of the goddess. Fragmentary impressions of the dismantled goddess. This is a theme in India. It's also in Egypt with the god. But in India, it's the theme of the goddess. where she was demeaned and lost to humanity, and parts of her body were to be found in various places, where temples of Shakti, goddess energy, became pilgrimage places. Maybe there had fallen her hand, or maybe her eye, but all these remaining fragmented images of the supreme goddess are also with us in the female saints, with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. And when we focus on these beings as fully sacred, we reconnect with original source, which is unhindered soul presence. It's love, it's compassion, bliss, wisdom, and energy. And in India, which was where I lived, the divine feminine lasted and was preserved better than anywhere else on the planet. Still the goddesses are there and they're revered, and still the trees and rivers and the springs and the rocks, which was once the way of our ancestors too. And this is why I find India so interesting and inspiring, because we had everything that we once knew covered over by these very powerful religions of Islam and Christianity and Judaism. And in India, they never had everything covered over. So we can see their clues as to what was once ours. But in this part of France where I live, in Occitanie, in the far south, Mary Magdalene is very important. She has the status of being wealthy and beautiful, and she came to live in this region, so it is said, after the crucifixion of her beloved Jesus. Either she came alone or she came with Jesus, who escaped his presumed death on the cross. There are both kinds of stories. And the question arises once more, did her feet really walk upon this land? Maybe. Or was she a Christian accepted manifestation of already existing primal goddesses? And again, this becomes unimportant, and she may indeed have been here, but the true relevance is that by this mythology or story, one connects to the goddess who had been lost to us. Mary Magdalene links us to the goddess. She links us to soul. She offers an alternative to the official story of the three male god aspects of the Son and the Father and the Holy Ghost who had usurped her throne. Mary Magdalene, she offers a way to blend the manifestation of the male God with the original divine feminine in her manifestation as the lover of Jesus, which opens one up to the spiritual experience of the divine couple, equality of beings bound in love, no one's slave and no one's master, all are born of the divine. And it is by the dance of love that divinity is most potently realized. In India, this is known and it's symbolized by the dance of the Rasa Leela. And it's the highest ideal of Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of love. This is a love that forgets all rules and all social constructs. Whatever is official religion is forgotten. This is yet another construct. All is shelved for love. Love has many forms. It is that which is between a mother and a child, for friendship. It is healing of the wounded. It's compassion for all creatures. And it is the vital bridge between man and woman. Forget hierarchy, forget war and power games. Forget the expected. Just surrender to love and love only. This is the greatest gift of the goddess to the masculine. All you have run after will never satisfy. You are alone on your pinnacle. You live by the sword and then you die by the sword. And what is that all about? Come back to the soul and dance. That dance needs magic. The mundane becomes divinized. The fight becomes a farce. The heart and the soul reawaken. The goddess is refound. This is just about love, and I've written my own version of the Lord's Prayer in a divine feminine form. So I want to finish by reading this. O Mother of the Cosmos, creating all in light, focus upon us this light so that we may know the way. Create your vision by our hands and with our hearts. Your desire is ours in all light and form. Grant our daily needs for both bread and spiritual insight. Free us from our mistakes as we let go of holding on to others' guilt. Waken us from forgetfulness. Free us from immature ways. From you we receive glory, potency, and life. Your song is beautiful and always renewing. May all of this be realized and true. Thank you.
Greetings. Well, thank you, Susie.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm sure there are people would like to comment or ask questions about this.
Yeah.
So who wants to go first? Welcome, Briellen from Australia, who's joined us just now, and who's been studying the Mary Magdalene Gospel for many years, I believe. And so anyone who would like to pose a question to Susie? Deborah, you're with us, are you? I think it's your turn. Go on, ask a question.
Here we go. Wait a minute, sorry. Oh, sorry. Hi. Hi. That was absolutely breathtaking. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. Question. What sort of question? What made you come up with the idea for the feminine Lord's Prayer? What was the idea behind that?
You know, it was when we were actually hanging out together.
Oh, wow.
We went to Mary Magdalene's cave.
Oh, right.
And
last year.
And I was singing in Aramaic, the Lord's Prayer. And I thought, well, this is such a male presentation. I want to find what may have been the origin behind it all. And then I looked at the Aramaic words, and then I found this presentation which I could relate to.
Wow.
But it was our adventure.
Oh, wow. I think I videoed you, recorded you singing as well. I think that was with Arthur, wasn't it?
I think Anouk filmed me singing the Lord's Prayer. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
And you. No, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions anyone's got for Susie? Tell us, I mean, I know that you spoke more about it last time, but tell us a bit, for those that weren't here last time and didn't hear your talk last year, tell us a bit more about Mount Bugarach and why it's important, what it symbolizes.
So last year I did talk about the mountain and this holy environment that I live in. It's the village of Bugarash. It's where the end of the world safe location was in Europe in 2012, where there's a magical mountain and the aliens are supposed to be connected with it. And the aliens were supposed to be coming to rescue everyone and take them to another dimension. So this very quiet village became suddenly known all over the world because all the world media came here and filmed it. So, but it's always been a very special place. It's Bugarash is like the mountain of the Lord, is the holy mountain, and it has legend. And in the legend, it talks of the goddess Nor, who's completely forgotten as a goddess. She's not recorded in any way except in this legend. And Nor, we know that as a word that relates to light from the Middle East. But it was also a local Occitan word, but the meaning of it is lost, but it is relating to the goddess. And this was definitely an ancient pilgrimage place, but forgotten to be so. Because on the mountain, there are figures to be seen, giant figures of like a great meditating kind of Buddha on one edge of the mountain. People call it the Buddha because it looks like it's in meditation. And then in the middle of the mountain, there's a goddess with outstretched wings. And obviously this was recognized by the ancient people. There's no way it wouldn't have been. And there was a legend that has come forward to this time, which gives clues about how people related to the mountain. So there was a story about how this land was becoming devastated by the storms, by the storm god. I don't have all the names and everything here. Ceres was his name. And he was just going crazy, destroying the crops, destroying people's houses. And the people were praying. They were praying in the forests, in the groves, to the fairies, the spirit people. There would be rocks with interesting formation, and they would pray to those as like gods and goddesses. And then there were two giants, as well as the goddess Nor. And the giants were called Bug and Arash, who the village is now named after. And they prayed to the god Jupiter to do something to take away the terrible behavior of this storm god. And to get closer to Jupiter, Bug and Arash climbed one on the other's shoulder, and by their climbing up to get closer to the heavens, they formed the body of the Bugarash mountain. And then the goddess was able to be there on her throne, and the village was protected forevermore. So this is a very sacred place. There are lots of caves, hidden caves in the hillsides, in the trees. There's like caves of Mary Magdalene, supposedly. Rennes Chateau is just very close by, which is supposed to be where there's supposed to be an ancient temple to the goddess Isis. And we have the hot springs of Rennes-le-Ban, which were very sacred to the ancient people. And we have the Black Madonna in the town of Limay, which is the closest town.
So we're coming up to tea time, but if anyone's got any last questions, we'll have a little break for tea. But has anyone got any final questions for Susie before she goes and puts the kettle on. I was interested when I came down to that part of the world. I've been down there 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I discovered this vicar who lived in Allée-les-Bains, I think. He was researching the Druid culture because there's a few standing stones of menhirs there. And I think that was quite a Celtic sort of part of the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was very pre-Celtic even. It was from very ancient, earliest times. Up above Allée-les-Bains, there's a hamlet called Saint-Sauveur. It's like right up in the clouds. And there are caves there that I found where there are ancient remains of a type of prehistoric people. And there's a standing stone, and it's a very interesting place. It shows that this was important to the ancient people in a spiritual regard.
Mm. Yeah, and I don't know if people know this, but the Pyrenees, the mountains of the Pyrenees range, I suppose Bugarach is the sort of off-lier. It's not properly part of them, but it's
the foothills.
It's the foothills, yeah. So the Pyrenees are named after a goddess who was the wife of Hercules. Heracles, when he passed through there on one of his pilgrim, his tasks, he had this love affair with Pyrenee, and she died sadly. So he piled up the Pyrenees mountains on top of her as her funeral cairn. That's a similar legend to your Bugarach one.
Yeah.
And again, we come back to the idea of the goddess being in the landscape.
Yeah, that's very much my inspiration, actually, being here, is feeling and relating to the goddess in this landscape. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear my daughter, Shanti Grace, speak about romanticism and pilgrimage?
Yeah, pilgrimage is a very interesting subject. Yeah, she's sweet, your daughter.
Because the Romantics saw the goddess in the landscape. I think the Romantics brought back that idea, the poets.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that it kind of it brought back that sacredness of the landscape itself.
Yes, which is the body of the goddess, her curves and her passions in the hot springs, and there are so many poetic ways of relating it.
Yeah. So Gaia is, in a sense, the modern eco version of Mary Magdalene. You could argue the greening of Mary Magdalene. I'll be talking about that a bit later after tea. Right. So if there's no other questions to Susie, thank you very much for sharing. And okay, let's break for tea. And Susie, before you go, can I ask you one thing? Is it possible for you to turn the camera around? Can you show us the mountain at all? Can you
Oh, I don't think it will stretch that. Oh, come on. There's lots of trees in the way.
Just point the camera around so we can see the mountain.
Just got to try and find a way through the trees where you can see it. You have to tell me if you can see it or not.
We can see, yeah, we're beginning to see it. Point the camera up a bit, above the trees. Yeah, I think there it is. That's the mountain. We can see it now, Bugarach. It looks like a sort of giant eagle without spread wings, doesn't it?
And the vultures fly around it.
Right.
There's lots of bird symbolism, wings.
Very shamanic then, yeah. Yeah, I do recommend people, if you're in the Pyrenees, go to Mount Bugarach, and it's definitely worth a visit. Right, thank you very much. Okay, well, we'll stop there for tea, and we'll recommence. We've got a talk by Annalisa Dare coming on at 4 o'clock. So thank you again to Susie and her marvelous knowledge. Okay.